Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Hutchings. My name is Param, and I'm from First Team 4946 from Bolton, Ontario. On behalf of the entire First Canada Youth Council, some of which who are here with us today, we thank you for taking out the time to speak with us and your incredible support of First Canada and youth in STEM. So just to kick things off, we'll get started about talking a little bit about the connection between FIRST and Rockwell Automation. So what's the draw of FIRST to Rockwell? How do these two programs really mesh? And is FIRST such a good fit for Rockwell in terms of sponsorship and ensuring sustainability into the future?
Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. So the question about, Rockwell and FIRST, Rockwell's and FIRST core mission and values are very aligned. So when you think about FIRST and its mission to attract students to pursue STEM, there couldn't be anything more important to a company like Rockwell and the people and the types of people that we have to employ around STEM. And so that's really important, but it goes deeper than just people who like to play with robots. We all like robots at Rockwell. There's other really core important elements, such as diversity, right? FIRST has a wonderful position on diversity, and I think it's incredible that early in the organization's mission that they decided to engage women and underrepresented groups, children from lower income situations, and that's really important stuff to Rockwell too. And I've been with Rockwell now for 12 years, and we've been on an incredible diversity and a culture of an inclusion journey for the last 12 years. And it's we're not there yet. It's a long journey, and we're going to continue it. But it feels to me like it's super aligned with what FIRST is trying to accomplish. Personally, I've had I felt a big impact from FIRST because of my younger daughter, who when she was growing up, she was my buddy that would help me work on projects, maybe design a deck and build it, or fix a vacuum cleaner. And she wanted to be an engineer just like her father. And then when she started getting into the later years and getting into high school, I felt like she kind of lost that part of her, and she lost a little bit of the self-confidence around who she was, and that piece of her around liking to design and fix and do projects. And around the same time, her science teacher reached out to me because she knew that Rockwell supported FIRST, and she wanted to start up a program. And so we both kind of talked my daughter into being a part of it. And then by the second year, she was the president of the Robotics Club. And by the third year, you could tell her sense of who she was and her confidence had changed significantly. And she felt like she belonged. She felt like she was an engineer, and she deserved to be there, and she was as good as anybody else, which I saw the impact that FIRST had on her firsthand. And so today she's a senior in university as a biomedical engineer, and she feels really comfortable with who she is, and she's as good as anybody else from an engineering standpoint. And so that really meant something to me, and that's why I am so personally involved in the FIRST program.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear. And I'm sure a lot of us on the Youth Council have similar stories to that, where FIRST has empowered all of us and just helped us become who we are, and has defined our identities going into university, the workforce, skilled trades, and it's really helped us push our boundaries in that way. So we're all very grateful to FIRST for that. So I guess I'll just hand off the baton to Cyrus over here.
Hey, Cyrus. One last comment I'd like to make about that, Param, is that as a manager that hires engineers and technicians and skilled tradespeople, one of the things we look for is FIRST on the resume. It's a huge differentiator, and that's why one of the reasons why Rockwell is such a big supporter money-wise and time-wise, right? A lot of Rockwell employees volunteer their time as mentors and coaches.
Yeah. Hi there. So our second question for you today is, could you please tell us briefly about some of the diversity initiatives at Rockwell?
Okay, so okay, diversity at Rockwell. So I'm gonna talk about it in a broad, big sense.
Mhm.
I feel like Rockwell's modern day diversity initiative started around the same time I joined the company 12 years ago.
Okay.
And what happened was our CEO at the time kind of pointed out, based on some data, that we were having a retention issue around women. And so we were hiring women, we were training women, and then women were leaving, which is a very expensive problem to have. And so our initiative started there with a CEO noticing an issue. Um, but what was genius looking back on it, but at 12 years ago didn't realize at the time, was the senior leaders decided that this diversity initiative was going to be led by the leaders of Rockwell. And that doesn't sound that like a big of a deal, but I know from other companies I work with, many times the diversity initiative is left to be led by the highest ranking woman in an office, or someone from a different culture. It's they're the ones who need to lead it. Well, Rockwell decided this is going to be led by our leaders, and it just so happens that most of our leaders looked like the rest of our company, which happened to be mostly white men. And so the dominant culture at Rockwell was white men. And so therefore the leaders were white men. And so the really smart decision to say that it's going to be led by this group of people. The problem was this group of people didn't really know a lot about diversity and creating cultures of inclusion. So the next step was some really significant training and workshops to help people like myself understand about unconscious bias, what it would be to take to be a better diversity partner, to help me understand about non-experiences, things that happen that I've never had to think about or deal with that other people do. And some cool training around bystander training, which means when you see something that doesn't seem right, do something about it. Don't just stand around. So anyway, all this training happened, and so now here's Rockwell and all of its leaders really ready to make a difference. Did we? Maybe, but what happened next was more important than all that training, and that was the senior leaders at Rockwell tied this diversity and inclusive culture to a business imperative. They said and demonstrated, if you don't do this, you're not going to be as successful as if you do. Diverse teams make better decisions. They see problems more completely. You have less of a retention issue. And now they've tied diversity and inclusion to a business imperative. So now you have all the leaders working really hard because they're being measured and they know that their performance is going to improve if they do a good job. So that was awesome. But then the next thing that happened was just as cool, and that was all of the young students who we've recruited out of school who join the organization, whether they're white males or people from different cultures or women. They're watching this leadership group work really hard on creating, supporting diversity and creating a culture where everybody can just show up and do their best work and not have to work hard about fitting in. And they started mimicking that because they take their cues from the leadership. Well, so now we've got leaders doing it. We've got, people who just joined the company doing it. And this initiative just kept rolling along. And 12 years later, we've come a long way. We still got a long way to go. And what we're doing now is we're kind of measuring it. And when we say measure it, we have all of the employees of Rockwell annually or biannually take a survey to tell us what their experience is like. What's it like working for Rockwell from a, do you feel supported? Do you get good feedback? Do you think our systems of rewards and recognitions is appropriate? Do you feel like you've got a career prospects at Rockwell? And all this feedback, we get to take that and see how we're doing around creating a culture of inclusion and knowing that diversity is a really big, important part of that. That's our 12-year journey in a nutshell. And I'm really excited about it because I feel like I had a front row seat to watching and being a part of all this happening. That's a great question, Cyrus.
Thank you so much. That's an awesome answer. I mean, I think that a lot of different companies and a lot of first teams can learn from Rockwell as well. I think definitely that one part that you said about listening to the people, how do people feel, is so, so, so true. I think the best person to answer the question is the people themselves. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
The first thing you learn about when you get feedback is be careful because some of it's going to hurt, and then once you get past the hurt part, now you've got something you can really work with.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
So moving on to the next question that we have for you is, during these times of major adaptation and overcoming challenges and barriers amidst the COVID-19 crisis, how has Rockwell Automation been impacted by COVID-19, and how have you guys been adapting to make sure that everything is running as smooth as it can?
Wow. So how has Rockwell been impacted by COVID-19, and how are we keeping things going? When I think about all of the changes, we've been impacted in so many ways. And some of these changes seem very temporary, and then some of them seem like they might last for a while. And you've heard people say things like the new normal or the next normal. I'm pretty sure we're seeing some of that right now. So some examples would be, not unsurprising, we've seen a decrease in the demand for our products and services across Canada, and that's because we help people keep their factories running. Well, when people shut down their factories, like the automakers, boy, there's less customers that need our stuff and our expertise, and so that feels pretty temporary. I'm pretty sure we're going to get back to making cars and other things. There's other changes that seem like they might be around a little bit longer, and we've seen demand for food and beverage spike. We've seen demand for life science type products spike. So some examples of that would be, there's people out there making food that are consumed by cafeterias or by restaurants, maybe big packages, and how are they manage that food. And those food suppliers have really scrambled to switch over and be able to produce food that you'd buy at a grocery store or that you might order online. And so that takes a lot of, automation and processes to change and switch over. So that's where we shine. Life sciences, you think of people making ventilators, people making face masks. Another cool kind of piece of this is people making machines that can sterilize equipment. So you think of all that PPE that nurses and doctors have to wear in the hospital, and it's a tragedy to think that that's disposable or has to be washed with detergents, every shift or every patient, when we could just run it through a sterilizing machine that uses UV radiation or something to clean it. What a better way, cost effective, more sustainable way of doing things. So these changes feel like we've been forced to discover better ways to do things, and they feel like they'll be around for a while. One of the most obvious changes, and I don't know if this meeting itself was driven by it, but a lot of us are staying home and working from home because we can. Not everybody, we still have people at Rockwell that are in a factory manufacturing some of our products, but about half of us in Canada are working from home. And we're on video calls all day. And I'll tell you what, you would think it would be less tiring than face-to-face meetings, but it's not. Video conferencing wears you out as when you're doing it for 8 hours a day. But the other thing that we learned, and the data doesn't lie, is we're 30% more efficient working from home. And so even if we could go back to work, I'm not so sure everybody would support, go back to your office, because we get a lot done working from home. And so we're going to still figure that out. But I suspect the way we work has changed forever because of the pandemic. I have hundreds of salespeople across Canada who used to think their job was to get in the car, drive to their customers, and walk their factory and have a face-to-face meeting with them about how we can help solve their problems. We're almost as good doing that on a video chat and using remote demo equipment as we were face-to-face. Another thing that's changed is we have an army of service engineers. When something's not working right in someone's factory, we dispatch a service engineer, and they have all the skills to go on site, understand what's not working, and fix it. We're finding that customers don't want us in their factories, right? They want to keep people separated and socially distanced. And we can do almost everything we could face to face remotely using tools. We launched a tool recently called Vuforia Chalk, which is a tool that lets people see what you're looking at, and you can write on the screen and say, look at this this bolt right here. What size is that one? And people can see. It's a version of augmented reality. So that the version of that could be holding an iPad in front of you, but it could also be using some Microsoft Lens glasses, and you could see what other people are seeing. You could see how they're marking up things and touching things. And so we're able to do service in a way that we didn't think we could for years, and it was super accelerated because of this pandemic. All that being said, there's a kind of a bigger kind of picture we're all thinking about at Rockwell, and that is, has this pandemic caused all of the manufacturers across Canada to rethink what their manufacturing floor looks like? And do they want to have a more automated and data-enabled enterprise? That doesn't mean less people. It means less people working side by side in a factory. You still need an infrastructure of people who know how to run the factory and people who know how to analyze the data and make better decisions. It's just different. We could have people running factories from their homes using the tools and software that we've been excited to introduce in the marketplace. This pandemic is accelerating it.
It's absolutely incredible to hear that Rockwell has been taking advantage of the situation at hand and adapting to it. And especially these changes are going to be having lasting effects into the future for automation in the workplace, working on these factories and things like that. And you also mentioned that Rockwell is helping out in automating the life sciences things with PPE. And it just led me to think of how first teams are making a difference too. We have one team in the North Bay, 1305, they've actually created a cart sterilizer that you can just build and use it to sterilize equipment. And I feel that it's absolutely incredible that the things that first teams are doing to make a difference in their communities is also being scaled up to create a difference for hospitals everywhere through companies such as Rockwell Automation. So that is great to hear.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah, for sure. And the first community never ceases to inspire.
Yeah.
So I have a question next. So Tessa Myers is an inspiring woman in STEM. What have you learned from her, and what kind of strengths does your collaboration bring?
Okay, so Tessa Myers is my boss. She's responsible for North America for Rockwell, which is a very large piece of our business, right? That's a big, important role. Before she became North American president, she was the vice president of Canada, which is my role. And so I've learned a lot from her because she kind of trained me to take over for her. One thing you need to know about Tessa is to me, she's pretty special and unique in that she is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And when you tell someone that someone's smart, they're like, what does that mean? Well, what it means is she can be sitting there in a meeting and hearing lots of different versions of complex information, and she will process it, synthesize it, and come to her own conclusions and be ready or pretty confident on what she just heard and what we need to do. The rest of us are still trying to understand, what did I just hear? I'm not so sure I got that. And so she's very fast with processing information. But what's kind of special about Tessa is she's actually a people person. So when you first talk to her on a video chat, she's going to ask you, how are you doing? How's your family? How are your kids? What'd you do this weekend? And she's a very caring person, and you can feel that. And from an inclusive culture standpoint, it's important to me. I want to be working for a company or for a boss that takes the time to care and understand what I'm thinking about, what I care about, what's important to me. And when that happens, I'm going to give her my best every day. And so I love her leadership style. There's another piece of that. You can't be a great leader and just always tell everybody, I care about you and I love you and everything's great. You also need to be able to be honest with people. We call that, having candor and being able to tell people the truth. Sometimes the truth is amazing, like you're doing a great job, keep it up. But I know when Tessa tells me that, she's not just telling me that because it's the nice thing to say, or she just wants me to feel good, because she'll just as quickly tell me, I need you to do a little bit better on that. But I don't mind, because I know she's not, having fun, making me feel bad. She's telling me the truth so I can be better, so we can all be better. Was she born this way? Was she just born amazing like that? I don't know, maybe. But one thing I do know is if you look at her career, she has strategically put together a group of experiences that have really developed her in many, many ways. So she's worked on the West Coast of the US as a salesperson. She's worked in Cleveland on managing products. She's worked in Singapore developing products. And then she came to Canada and ran a country, and now she's in North America running a 1/4 of our business. And those movements and bringing a family and living in Singapore and Toronto and San Francisco, she's learned a lot, and she's had a ton of great experiences. All that said, she's just a regular person. She's just a really cool, normal person who likes to cook out and grill. I've met her family, her husband, and had wine with them in the evening, and just a really great person. I've learned a lot from Tessa. There's a few people in your life that are going to have an impact like Tessa has on me, and she's one of them.
Yeah, that's extremely inspiring, especially how she's just, how you said, she's just a normal person and she has all this positivity in her, and she's just an amazing person.
Yep.
I have another question to follow on with that.
Okay.
What are what are your anticipated predictions about the world of robots and robotics?
Well, hey, don't get me started on this one, because I could talk for hours. So you got to push the buzzer when it's time to stop. So my whole goal in life when I was a teenager was I wanted to program robots. I went to school, University of Buffalo, and I got my first job. And at my first job, I programmed Rockwell PLCs that were controlling robots. And back then, that was complicated stuff. You needed a degree and experience in programming and electrical engineering to get that done. I'm glad I did it. It was so rewarding. Today, you don't need a degree to program a robot, right? They're so much easier to use in how we interface with them. And so when I see that evolution and where I think we're going, it's so exciting. I first think of some TV shows and movies that I watched in the 80s and 90s growing up. I know you guys probably never heard of them, but there was a show called Bionic Man that we used to get so excited about. And this was a man who was half machine, half human, because he got in a bad accident. And his eye was the first example of augmented reality I ever saw, but I didn't know that's what it was back then. And his arm was robotic and super strong. And there's an example of a guy using technology to do really good things. He was solving crime. One person who was bionic. There was another show called Knight Rider, which was a car that was self-driving and had artificial intelligence. And again, this amazing technology was used to capture bad guys and put them in jail. There was other shows like Terminator, movies like Terminator, which I'm guessing you probably heard of or maybe seen, and Matrix, which I just watched this past weekend, which was a great movie then, and it's still a great movie. This is a little bit more dire, and it's about artificial intelligence, at war with humanity, and who's going to survive, humans or artificial intelligence. But the reason why I bring up all of them is how they were so amazingly accurate with what they thought the future could be, not doom, but in gloom, but like the technology and where it would evolve to. And so you think of a robot. When I started working, it was an articulated arm in a cage, stay away, it might kill you if it whipped up. The future is going to be collaborative robots, right? So robots side by side. And once we pass that, safety system barrier where everybody's comfortable that robots are safe, we're going to be working right next to them, whether they're lifting cars or, grains of rice. Working next to a robot is going to be a huge transformation. We're not there yet, but there's examples of it. The next kind of cool kind of evolution is how we interact with robots. For me, it was writing pages and pages of code to get it to move, to then it was just joysticks and teaching it where to move, to there's examples of robots that we talk to, and then there's future examples of robots that just know what they need to do when they wake up, right? And they're teaching themselves and figuring things out in themselves. So that's kind of a cool process. Another kind of interesting change for robots is going to be around their mobility. And a lot of this is being driven by the autonomous car industry, right? For a car to be able to wake itself up and go somewhere and do something, think of that technology in every robot, whether it's a car on a road or in a house or an office, whether it's flying or wheeling around or walking, this mobility of a robot, and then all those other pieces that I talked about. And then finally, again, most robots we think of are these articulated arms with limited motion. I think of a future robot as more of like an octopus with infinite flexibility, and infinite joints with, just way more mobility. So you get the flexibility, the mobility, the artificial intelligence, and the collaborative safety pieces. That's a whole different robot. And that means it could be right next to you making your omelet in the morning, going to the doctor or shopping with you in your car. Or just going shopping for you. The future's pretty cool. The one I haven't talked about is the example of what my daughter is in school for, biomedical engineering, and that's integrating robots and humans. And sometimes that's a little bit scary to think of, but better, better eyesight, better potentially memory, better processing capabilities, augmented reality. There's so many cool potential applications of it. Longer life because of mechanical pieces of us being upgraded. That's a little bit scary, but it's also the future. We're not going to be able to stop that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think everything that we're capable of doing in the future, and it sort of inspires you to start thinking, continue thinking, what's possible, what can we do next? And it's crazy what we're capable of now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a cool question.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we have another one in the same sort of vein. So what advice would you have for youth in today's world who want to start making a difference from this early age? And yes, the right answer is join a first team, but anything else would work too.
What advice for someone who wants to make a difference? And so my short, quick answer would be, joining first or some other organization would be a big piece of it. But if you're a young person and you're looking to make a difference, my first piece of advice to you would be, making a difference sounds great, and because everybody wants to be valued and think that what they did means something and has purpose. But I would say start off with something smaller than changing the world and being a little bit more focused. So I think of like ways to make a difference. The off the top of my head examples would be climate change, or something simpler like cleaning a beach, or a park, or helping homeless people, or getting involved with poverty or underprivileged people, and helping them. And so when you narrow that making a difference down to something specific and you're passionate about, like I get a little bit concerned about someone who wants to make a difference, but they don't really have a passion. When you combine making a difference with something that you're super passionate about, now we're talking. And so then what's the obvious advice? Well, join a group, get with other people who share the same passion. and then you can raise money to support the cause. You can, that's really what it's about. Be passionate, and then get involved. Surround yourself with other people, and then the passion will take over, and you'll make a difference. I would also kind of also flip that question around and let everybody know you don't have to change the world to have an impact. The smallest little impact can make a huge difference for somebody. And so, during this COVID crisis, it's not the same experience for anybody. I enjoy working from home. I'm happy that I'm not on an airplane every week like I used to be. But it's not the same experience for everybody. There's people that might be in a very crowded, small apartment, and they might have to take care of their kids while they're working during the day. And there's a little bit more stress and not knowing what's going to happen. Reaching out to that person and just talking to them and having a little bit of normal would be awesome. And leaving somebody with a smile can have a huge impact on that person. And so I bring up that example because that's very real and it's on my mind every day. But it's an example of having a small impact and leaving somebody with a smile is pretty important. We also got to save the world and the whales and the trees and everybody and the monkeys, but we also in the rainforest, but we also got to help each other every day. And that's so much easier to help individuals when they're struggling. So wanted to bring that up as an opportunity to make a difference.
Thank you so much. That's an incredibly amazing way of looking at the situation that we are in right now and turning it into an opportunity to spread positivity. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well said.
And for our last question today, I just wanted to ask you yourself, what strategies do you personally use for mental health and relieving stress?
So what strategies do I use to relieve stress and to keep up a positive mental health?
Definitely.
So, one way of looking at that question is by, I've got a little bit more experience, I think, than you guys might have in stressful situations because of years and years of, just being on this earth. And one thing I tell my daughters who are in their mid-20s, how you feel right now, you might feel that stress, but every time you survive one of these stressful situations, it's going to be a little bit easier because you've developed the skill and your ability to handle complexity. So next time you're equipped. And just remind yourself, whenever you're feeling stress, you're going to be feel different later tonight or tomorrow morning when you wake up or next week. This will pass and you will figure out how to get through it. And your other option could be just to freak out, right? It's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. Calm down. You just realize you'll get through this. You might not know how now, but you will. But now there's some work to be done. How will I get through this? So when you take a stressful situation and lay it out on the table, there's usually ways to break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks. And you might not have the answer to every chunk, but you'll have the answer to some of the easy pieces. And then you can come up with a plan to go tackle some of the more difficult pieces of a problem. So breaking it down and then leveraging your network. There are other people who have had a similar situation. You don't have to carry this burden on your shoulders alone. Talk to other people, get advice from your mentors and coaches and your friends and your family. One of my biggest fears is that my children will think that one of their issues is so big and bad that they can't share it with me because either they're embarrassed or they don't know how to solve it. And what I like to tell them is that there isn't any problem we can't solve together. And so having someone on your team that you feel is that person in your corner, that you're never alone and that you have someone that you can talk to about your issues and challenges and the stress is pretty invaluable, right? And depending on what's stressing you out, you might have different coaches and mentors you turn to. If it's a business problem, someone that you work with or your manager versus maybe a personal issue, maybe that's a relative or somebody. But we never should feel like we're alone with our problems, no matter how big they are.
I definitely agree with that. That is such a powerful thing to say, and I love that you said it. I think it everything just gets better the second you talk to someone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just, if that's the one thing anyone takes away from all of this, I just think that's so powerful. Um, Thank you so much, first of all, for being here today and taking your time to be part of this call. This was amazing. I feel like I've learned so much myself, and this was amazing.
You're too kind, Cyrus. Thank you. I appreciate the great questions, and yeah, I just really appreciate you guys being engaged and being interested. And if you'd ever want to talk about this again, or personally, if you ever want to connect and talk about the future of robotics or interesting movies on Netflix, I'd be happy to get together.
Thank you so much.